What's good, everyone? Long time no see. Yeah, it has been far too long since we last hung out together like this here in video form. That's my bad. But here we are, it's the end of 2021, just a week out from Christmas as I record this, and something about this time of year has got me thinking of you all, and feeling a strong urge to get a video uploaded after years away from YouTube. Not gonna lie though, it's not the holiday season which has me all emotional and nostalgic, it's actually the fact that the 17th of December just gone was the 10th anniversary of the PlayStation Vita's release. To those of you who own a PlayStation Vita, I'm sure you'll agree that this is a system which deserves to be celebrated. And to some of you hardcore fanatics out there, I wouldn't at all be surprised if you do consider this date to be a much more momentous occasion than even Christmas itself. For real though, the fact that it's been 10 years since the Vita launch means it's also been over 5 years now since Team Molecule released the Henkaku Homebrew enabler. And with Henkaku letting us run native Homebrew on our Vita hardware, came a good-sized community of like-minded people who pulled together to help support this great handheld hardware long after its creators had basically given up on it. I really enjoyed covering the PlayStation Vita scene here on YouTube, and ended up creating over 50 videos talking specifically about PlayStation Vita scene releases. So in order to try and help celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Vita, I've decided to get a video uploaded for the first time in forever. And in this video, I want to take a broad look at some of the most impressive developments in the scene since my absence from it. Now for me personally, I feel my favourite homebrew to be released for the Vita in the past 2 years has got to be Sharpscale from Virus. If you're unfamiliar with Sharpscale, it's a plugin that changes the display scaling method to provide a cleaner and sharper image. Sharpscale provides the biggest benefit when it's installed on a PlayStation TV. It can run on a handheld Vita too, although its use cases are much more limited when doing so due to the lower resolution of the Vita's screen. Running Sharpscale on my PlayStation TV impressed me so much that I knew I was going to eventually have to get around to making a video going in depth with it. Of course, the guys at My Life in Gaming have already covered Sharpscale well over a year ago now, and I found their video to be highly entertaining to watch. I'm a huge fan of their channel, especially their RGB Masterclass series of content, which has helped me to improve my retro video game battle station a lot. Seriously, I can't recommend their videos enough, nor could I ever dream to match their content's sky-high levels of production values. I did notice though that in their coverage of the Sharpscale plugin, they decided to stick closely to the official methods for launching games on the PlayStation TV, as well as showing some comparisons with the analog video outputs available on certain PSP models. This meant that after I got done watching their Sharpscale video, there were still a few specific scenarios that I wanted to test and compare in order to explore all of the options we have available to us when utilizing other homebrew in combination with Sharpscale. And as such, while the majority of this video will be going over the different effects Sharpscale settings have on PSP, PS1, and Vita games running on a PlayStation TV, I'll also be including some discussions on several other homebrew releases which each share the same underlying theme of extending the graphics and display options of the Vita hardware. Just before we get into it, I'll give a brief overview of the PlayStation TV or Vita TV hardware with regards to how it displays games by default with its stock system settings. The PlayStation TV was released late in 2013, nearly 2 years after the Vita had launched, and was the only official video output method released at retail for Vita content. Just like a handheld Vita, the PSTV supports Vita game cartridges, as well as downloadable Vita, PlayStation Portable, and PlayStation 1 content from the PlayStation Store. Its main points of differences from the handheld Vita are the obvious removal of the portable screen and controls, which instead get replaced with an HDMI, Ethernet, and USB port. The PSTV supports 3 resolutions over HDMI, those are 480p, 720p, and 1080 interlaced. As implied by the name, the PlayStation TV was marketed as a way to enjoy these games on your television's largest screen. Sony made the choice of stretching the games you play on it well beyond their native resolutions, as well as force enabling a bilinear filter to help smooth over any inaccuracies caused by this scaling approach. Unfortunately, if we compare the in-game settings screen found in PSP and PS1 software across both my PlayStation TV and my handheld Vita here, we can see that certain options were actually stripped away from the PlayStation TV. Most significant is that we lose the option to turn off the bilinear filter, or the smoothing toggle as it's sometimes called. One screen in the PSTV system settings allows you to make some slight adjustments to the size of the output image, but that's really all that's changeable out of the box. There's no advanced display settings to be found, and the fact that the bilinear filter toggle was a removed choice on the PlayStation TV was more than a little disappointing to fans of sharp pixels, to say the least. While I certainly did enjoy owning my PlayStation TV over the years, primarily as a means of being able to capture and stream PlayStation Vita content, retro gaming enthusiasts, and those who just enjoy getting the highest possible fidelity out of their gaming, quickly determined that the PlayStation TV was sadly just not as good as it could have been, and that they would need to look elsewhere in order to capture, stream, or just enjoy the sharpest PS1 or PlayStation Portable visuals. This remained the case right up until April of 2020, when the Homebrew developer Cuvavirus released the Sharpscale plugin to the world. And with Sharpscale installed on a PlayStation TV, we gained the ability to disable the forced bilinear smoothing filter, as well as the option to have our games display at their native resolutions, or with an integer scale. Pixel perfectionists are well versed with integer scaling. Put simply, it's the most accurate and even way to increase the size of certain graphics, especially 2D pixel art. Now I know I'm not the best person to explain all the finer details of this stuff, so rather than continue rambling away here, I've decided to just go ahead and show you an example of what integer scaling looks like, specifically using PlayStation Portable software captured from my PlayStation TV with Sharpscale.
Get ready.
Good old PlayStation Portable, released in December of 2004 in Japan, and everywhere else in 2005. I'm sure lots of you enjoyed owning a PSP back in the day. I know I look back fondly on its incredibly active homebrew scene. More to the point though, it was a comfortable and quality feeling handheld, featuring a whopping 4.3-inch LCD screen with a resolution of 480 by 272. That's right, kings, 4 inches is a whopper. Now that 480 by 272 resolution is interesting because if we double it, we will get 960 by 544, and this is the resolution of the PlayStation Vita's screen. The PSP resolution being exactly half of the Vita's means that if you've ever played PSP content on a handheld Vita, you'll have been looking at a nice, crispy 2x integer scale. So that is to say that every individual pixel in a PSP game becomes 4 on a Vita's screen, 2 pixels tall and 2 pixels wide. Unfortunately for the PlayStation TV, the perfect 2x integer scale enjoyed by the handheld Vita wasn't an included display output option for us to choose. Instead, a PlayStation TV will stretch the image beyond the whole number integer to nearly fill the screen, then smear the bilinear filter all over the image without any option to toggle it off. What we're looking at now is how the PlayStation TV will output the PSP version of Final Fantasy IV in 720p. Now let's compare that directly with how the game looks using Sharpscale to maintain a smaller 2x integer scale, as well as disabling the bilinear filter. Sharpscale provides us with the option to have a much cleaner and more accurate image. This should be especially noticeable in games that feature 2D pixel art like this one. One drawback to running integer scaling in 720p is that less of the screen space will be used on your TV. But to my eyes, this is still a much more enjoyable gameplay experience. If you find a full screen gaming experience to be mandatory for your enjoyment though, well, Sharpscale definitely does have other options for you. Let's switch from 720p to 1080i resolution, and I'll also switch it back to the stock original display, as if we didn't have Sharpscale installed at all. So here's the default look for Final Fantasy IV running at 1080i. So just like with the stock 720p settings, we see that the image is stretched and the bilinear smoothing filter is turned on. Now let's see what Sharpscale can do if we go ahead and enable integer scaling and turn that bilinear filter back off again. And as you can see, Sharpscale offers huge benefits to the 1080i resolution as well. What we're looking at here is a 4x integer scale. If you take the PSP's native width of 480 pixels and multiply it by 4, you get exactly 1920 pixels wide. And if you take its height of 272, multiply that by 4, you actually end up with 1088, just 8 pixels taller than typical 1080p Full HD. So because this ends up being so close to a perfect fit, it's decided to just crop off the top 4 and the bottom 4 pixels from the PSP image here. And since the PSP image is being scaled 4 times, it's really only the top and bottom horizontal row of pixels that we're missing here. In this way though, we're able to enjoy the game at full screen with accurate scaling. Here's how the Sharpscale configuration menu looks, by the way. I'll go ahead and describe what most of these settings do for you now, as well as show on screen how each of them looks. So along the top here we have 4 different scaling modes. Original matches the original output of the PlayStation TV, as if you didn't actually have the Sharpscale plugin installed at all. Next up is easily my favourite, it's the integer scaling option that we've talked about. So this performs an integer scale to the largest possible size at the current display resolution. So it takes into account not just the resolution your PlayStation TV is running at, but also the output resolution of the game software running. Next up is the Real mode. Real mode will show a game at its unscaled resolution, or its native resolution basically. This obviously results in a very small image in the center of the screen, but it's still a very handy one to have here because certain Vita games run at different resolutions, so the Real mode is useful for seeing the resolution that different games run at. And yeah, just wait till we look at what the PlayStation 1 does for resolutions, it's pretty crazy. And the 4th scaling mode here is Fitted. So Fitted does its best to try and scale the image to fit the screen while maintaining the correct aspect ratio. Next in the list is the PS1 aspect ratio options. We'll talk more about those in the PlayStation 1 section. And just below that you see the scaling algorithm option. That's where you can turn the bilinear filter on or switch it to point, which is off basically. And the final option is the unlock frame buffer size. We're going to get into that in the Vita section of the video. Of course, seeing the PSP games blown up this large does come with the unfortunate side effect of highlighting the dithering which was used in many games on the system. On a real PSP screen, you could notice this dithering if you looked really closely at the games. Although when the games are running in their smaller native resolution, the dithering is a lot less offensive. When running PSP content at full screen on your television though, there really is no hiding the dithering. Whether or not this bothers you is probably totally subjective. I'm sure there's plenty of people who would rather just keep playing PSP content in its handheld forms. In the My Life in Gaming video, they compared Sharpscale on a PlayStation TV with a real PSP outputting 480p via component video cables, then being line doubled to 960p with an OSSC. Taking a look at their comparison, to my eye at least, while it's clear that the PSP's component signal comes pretty close in terms of sharpness, it does look as though there's a small amount of detail being lost, and the image overall appears quite a bit darker than the PlayStation TV image does over HDMI. This is likely due to the nature of the digital to analog conversion that is taking place when the video signal leaves the PSP over the component video cables. This was definitely interesting data to see, as the component cable into external scaler or line doubler approach was certainly one of the most commonly recommended highest quality options for playing these games on original hardware prior to Sharpscale. But was using the component cable output provided on later model PSPs, in combination with an external scaler or line doubler like the OSSC, really the best we could do prior to Sharpscale existing? Well, it was never my preferred method, and I did dabble with this quite a bit over the years, largely due to what happened with one of my favourite strategy RPG series, Valkyria Chronicles. Released back in 2008, the first game in the series was initially a PlayStation 3 exclusive, and I fell in love with its world, art style, and gameplay. I had a great time playing this game through to the end, and it left me desperate for a sequel. 2 years later, in 2010, a sequel did arrive. However, it left fans with mixed emotions due to the series shifting from the PS3 hardware over to the PSP. While it was great news to get a sequel, it was also a little disappointing to see the series quality need to be compromised and toned down in some ways due to the much more limited nature of the PSP hardware. Even worse though, the next year in 2011, a third game was released in the series which improves on Valkyria Chronicles 2 in numerous ways, especially with regards to its story, and to this day the game remains as only ever having been released inside Japan. I wasn't about to let this transition to the PSP stop me from enjoying one of my favourite series of games though, so I looked towards the PSP homebrew scene of the era to try and make the best of the situation. And thankfully, the PSP homebrew scene provided solutions, which allowed me to be able to play through a fan-translated version of the third game, as well as giving me the option to be able to play through the games on a much larger screen. In fact, I was able to play through each of the PSP entries to the series using the same television that I played through Valkyria Chronicles 1 on the PlayStation 3 with. And this was thanks to PSP custom firmware, as well as a plugin and PC tool called Remote Joy Lite. This solution had me install a custom USB driver on my computer, and that enables an executable program to be able to get a USB video class connection to your PSP, running custom firmware, and the Remote Joy Lite plugin. There's 3 slightly different methods which can allow this to stream from the XMB interface, within PSP games, as well as within PS1 games loaded through POPs, which is the PS1 support built into the PSP firmware. I clearly remember being really impressed by this solution almost a decade ago when I looked into it, and sure enough, taking a look back at it again today, when stretching the Remote Joy Lite display on your computer, it has some software scaling built right in which allows you to dial in just about any size you would like, including perfect integer scaling should you fine-tune the size correctly. So here we are. Here it is, a purely digital method of capturing and displaying PSP footage on a larger monitor that has been around for quite some time thanks to the PSP homebrew scene. And this was actually what I was most interested in comparing with Sharpscale's PSP output. So let's take a look at how both of the outputs compare, using Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core as an example game now.
They're Wutai troops in disguise. Now, head to the open area above.
Towards Sector 8.
Yes, but first you have to clear a path.
Clear a path?
You'll see what I mean. Be careful.
So I can cut loose, right?
Use some discretion.
It's showtime.
Seems I had good reason to be impressed all those years ago, because I've got to say it's amazing how closely this footage compares from the PSP side of things to the PSTV with Sharpscale. Every pixel is showing up, and both seem to provide equally sharp results. There's a very minor difference in colours between each, which is barely noticeable after uploading footage here to YouTube. This colour difference isn't noticeable if I compare the image on my TV to the PSP output, which leads me to believe that it's most likely occurring from chroma subsampling, or colour compression basically, first being done by my HDMI capture card. Although it is worth noting that this level of detail is not really too important for most use cases, due to colour compression inevitably happening later in the chain regardless. What I mean by this is if you save recording files to a lossy format, or heck, even if you chose to save footage to a lossless video format while using a high-end 4x4x4 lossless capture card, your footage would still undergo 4x2x0 chroma subsampling compression when you upload it to YouTube or broadcast it out on a streaming platform like Twitch. Although if you can still notice a slight colour difference between these two after I upload this here on YouTube, then that's probably a great example as to the level of difference spending more on a lossless capture card can net you in the retro gaming content niche. For somebody who owns a lossless capture card, I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to get identical colour results between each of these two sources, which really is a testament to how good both Sharpscale and Remote Joy Lite are at what they do. It's just so nice to see the potential of a PlayStation TV finally fulfilled, and see it get so close to this PSP's digital output. And since we're already really deep into the weeds here now, we might as well go ahead and fast forward to the Vita homebrew scene, where in 2019, Xerpi released a plugin which lets you stream your PlayStation Vita screen to your computer, also via USB. This plugin is really impressive. It makes your Vita act like a USB video class device, such as a webcam or a USB video capture card, and gets detected easily by most popular streaming software like OBS. Unfortunately, the handheld PS Vita isn't quite powerful enough to be able to push its native resolution out over USB while maintaining a smooth 60 FPS in the video output, but it does get very close. To help with this, Xerpi included a number of different output resolutions, and by bumping the vertical resolution down by around 50 pixels, stable 60 FPS footage is able to be captured. I couldn't help but notice that the PSP's much lower native resolution of 480 by 272 is one of these preset resolutions, so I figured it might be interesting to also include my handheld Vita's USB video output to our current PSP comparison here. And so here's a look at my handheld Vita streaming some PSP content over USB now. Note that for each of these examples I had them scaled to be 1088 pixels in height, basically the same 4x integer scale as applying to all three.
To clear a path.
Clear a path?
You'll see what I mean. Be careful.
So the handheld Vita footage is equally as sharp as the other methods, although it does provide a noticeably darker output than the PSP. It doesn't look bad, but I did notice some minor details that are visible on a PSP screen, like the brick patterns against this dark wall, basically gets lost to the darkness on the handheld Vita's darker USB output here. There's also a known issue with some screen tearing occurring in certain situations when using this plugin, which would apparently not be a simple fix. Still, I have to give major props to Zerpy for how stable this plugin is. You can connect and reconnect the USB cable from a Vita, and in order to wake the video back up in your stream software, all you need to do is just retoggle a video setting and it wakes right back up. This is certainly a much more user-friendly experience than the PSP Homebrew I looked at today, which did crash a couple times for me during capture for this video, and it also requires you to install an unsigned driver, which has become somewhat of a pain in modern versions of Windows. I can see how this release would be an absolute lifesaver to many people, especially those who don't have a PlayStation TV or a capture card, and still want to be able to dabble with capturing or streaming with a PlayStation Vita. Apologies for the length, team, but it looks like we're finally through the PSP section of the video here now. Up next, let's take a look at the PlayStation 1. Actually, you know what? This video is taking a lot longer to make than expected. I might just go ahead and break this video into 3 different parts so that I can release the PSP section now, then I'll release PS1, then finally I'll look at the Vita in a third part. I'll definitely still do a single upload with all the parts combined when it's complete. That was my original plan. As I record this part now, it's actually Christmas Eve tomorrow in New Zealand, so that'll give you an idea on how long I've been slaving away at this crap. In the summer heat too. It's summer over here. This is nuts. Anyways, I do know this subject is pretty niche and may not be that interesting to many of you. But if you are watching and listening to this, thank you so much. Take this as a sign that we're back, baby. I'm gonna do my best to start pumping out uploads again. I have missed making content for you all a lot, and I do have some fresh new series of content lined up for release soon. I'll still do some of the classic tutorial style content, although I would also like to diversify it into some new types of content too, which hopefully you'll find interesting. Anyways, if I don't get another video online before Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Feliz Navidad, all that good stuff. Hope to see you all again real soon. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Discord server too if you want to keep in touch. Peace out.